perception, they're using it to describe an enlightened being. And the an enlightened being refers to a person who only has valid perceptions, as we started to say before the break. They're having direct valid perceptions all the time. And the connotation of that is they always tell the truth because they're having direct valid perceptions about everything all the time, and so everything is accurate all the time. Right? So there's this exercise in Buddhist logic where you try to establish that Lord Buddha is a person who can't lie. Right? Why? Because we're basing our actions upon what he's saying and what he's teaching. So it would be nice to know that what the Buddha is saying is accurate all the time, so that we can trust it and act on it in good faith and confidence, right? So the scriptures, say that maybe ask a question. No, I'll just say. So the biggest indication that the Buddha is a person who can't lie and is someone who always tells the truth is simply that he describes our current state of affairs so accurately. Buddha, you pick up a Buddhist text and it says, you're going to die. Life is suffering and you're going to die, right? He says over and over again, everything's impermanent, everything changes, everything turns to suffering, right? It's just a matter of how long it takes. Everything is subject to change, and everything wears out, and everything comes to an end. Everything dies, and it's absolutely true, right? You can confirm it for yourself. And it's not the type of thing that you see, the newspapers talking about, make the most of your life because you're going to die, make sure that your life is meaningful because you're going to die, right? In fact, everyone typically avoids it, right? Not many people want to talk about the fact that we're going to die, and we need to make use of our life before then. So here's someone who comes along and says, wake up, you're going to die, do something about it, right? Out of all of the media sources and all the information sources, how many of them are saying, this is what you need to do with your life before you die, and this is how you make your life meaningful before you die, and this is how you put an end to suffering, before you die and after you die, right? So do something about it, right? The Buddha is saying, look, there's a lot more time after you die than there is until you die. So, you've got however long until you die. Maybe it's a day, a year, 30 years, 50 years, whatever, right? It's a very short period of time compared to how much time will pass after you die. You have infinite existence, right? Endless existence after this life. So be concerned about what happens to you after you die more than being concerned about what happens to you before you die, right? You have this very, very, very small period of time, relatively speaking, that we're so concerned about, right? What we do with ourselves until we die, right? I gotta get this, and I gotta get that, and I gotta, have this experience, and I gotta have that experience, and I gotta say, blah, blah, blah. But, it's an infinitesimal blink of an eye compared to how long we'll live and exist in future lives after we die. And so the Buddha is saying, wake up, get a clue, take care of your infinite future, and stop fixating on the short term, as it were, right? So don't waste the time. Get ready for what happens after you die, right? Lord Buddha is the only one who's come and said that. All of the newspaper ads don't say, spend your entire life preparing for what happens to you after you die, right? No, they say, buy what our advertisers are selling. This will make you happy. And this is what you should spend your life doing. It's consuming the products that we're producing for you to buy and give us your money, right? That's what the rest of the world is doing, all right? But the Buddha is saying, look, everything dies. You have to lose everything and do something about it. So the basis in Buddhism for accepting that the Buddha is a person who might be telling the truth all the time is that he is telling the truth about that, whereas no one else is. Nobody else does. And so because he's so accurate in that statement, give him credit on the other fronts as well, right? Okay. So based upon his accurate description of our lives here and the nature of this realm, then in Buddhism we would say, well, then you should give credibility and credence to what he says about the hell realms and craving spirits and other realms as well, because he described this realm so accurately when no one else does. Then give credibility to the fact that he may or is likely describing other realms accurately also, right? So that's the basis of what we call a person of prana, or valid perception. So there's a statement, there's another statement, let me find it. This is from Master Dignaga. I bow down to the protector, those gone to bliss, the teacher, those who wish to benefit living beings, and those who have turned into ones with valid perception. Okay. So, Master Dignaga is referring to a person of ultimate compassion. And so, when Master Dignaga makes the statement, what happens is that another group of practitioners in ancient India come up to him and say, basically, what are you talking about? There's a group in ancient India, they were non-Buddhists, and they basically came up to him and said, how can someone have ultimate compassion? How can anyone care for others more than they care for themselves? How is it possible that anyone would go through their life giving someone else the advantage all the time at their own expense, right? I mean, it's a crazy idea, right? And so Master Dignaga says, well, Lord Buddha does that. And they said, well, how does he get to be ultimately compassionate? How long does it take to become ultimately compassionate? How long does it take to get this bodhisattva impulse where you're thinking of others more than you're thinking about yourself throughout your whole life? You meet nice people in the world, right? But how many people do you meet who give up everything to help everyone around them all the time? Not likely. So Master Dignaga is saying, well, you can learn to be like that. And they ask, well, how long does it take to become like that? And so, a long time, millions of years, many lifetimes, right? And the idea is it's so unnatural for a human being to always put others first and to not be thinking of themselves all the time, right? And so Master Dignaga just said, yes, it's lifetimes, it's many lifetimes that it takes to develop this ability. And so then this Hindu group in ancient India says, well, that's crazy. There's no such thing as a future life. This is it. There's only this life. What do you mean future lives? And which is unusual at the time. This is ancient India. Most people are Hindu. Pretty much everybody believes in future lives, right? But there was a group like us in the West today that says, no, this is it. This is all there is. One life to live. Go for it. There's nothing after this. Nothing happens after this. So, the idea that it's going to take multiple lifetimes to develop this kind of compassion is crazy, because there's no such thing as multiple lifetimes. So, they were called the Shravakas.
They were called the what?
Shravakas.
Okay, thanks.
So, and Master Dignaga was just like, well, come on. Everybody knows there's future lives. Your mom and dad told you so, your teachers told you so, your friends tell you there's future lives. What do you mean that you don't believe there's future lives? And so then he had to then set out to prove that there were future lives to this group because they didn't believe it, right? So this is where the proof of future lives originates, was from this group in ancient India that came up to Master Dignaga and said, no such thing. And so he basically said, well, why would you say that? And I said, well, it's obvious. You die, your body falls over, it doesn't move. I can talk to you, you don't talk back to me. Therefore, you're not there and there's no future life. They're saying, listen, you Buddhists, you say that there's this idea that the mind continues, right? The mind doesn't continue. The body falls over and the mind stops. The mind is not continuing, right? So that was basically their position. The mind must be dead. And since you're saying that your future life is the mind moving on to the next life, no such thing, because you're dead and the mind's not functioning, right? So clearly there's no future lives. And so this is where the fight starts, and this is how we get into future lives, right? Master Dignaga is praising Lord Buddha and his ultimate compassion, and then this group comes along and says, how long does it take to get that ultimate compassion? He says, oh, lifetimes. And they say, there's no such thing. You only have one lifetime. It's ridiculous. And he says, well, how do you know? And they say, because the mind stops. And he says, well, how do you know the mind stops? And they say, because you fall over and you talk to the corpse and it doesn't talk back. Right? So the mind must have stopped. So that's the origination of the analysis or the proof of the existence of future lives. So who believes these kinds of things? This idea of you fall over and you're dead and the mind stops and there's no future life. I mean, we do, right? I mean, that's Western culture, right? Western culture is you got a body, you got a mind. It's basically your brain. Your body dies, your brain stops, you're done. And maybe there's like a little crystal spirit like that floats off to heaven somewhere. I don't know, right? Depending on your belief system. So.
And maybe get resurrected.
Yeah, I mean, all sorts of possibilities. So, in the monastery, I guess Michael would talk about how when he was in the monastery and they had to debate about future lives, they would always assign him the Shravaka position. They said, oh, you're American, you're just like the Shravakas. You believe all the same things that the Shravakas do. And he's like, yeah, the debates were really easy because I had like 25 years of indoctrination into this. And so it was very easy to do these debates, and it was very hard for them to beat me because, I had all the angles that we learn in the West about the fact that when you die, you're done. So anyway, that's how we go from logic to the study of future lives. I want to make sure there's some questions on your homework I want to make sure that I cover. The definition of valid perception is a fresh, unmistaken state of mind. Okay, so unmistaken state of mind. And fresh would exclude memory, for example. Okay. All right. So we talk about then the difference between omniscience and omnipotence. And so, what does it mean for a person to be omniscient or all-knowing? Does it mean that they know, where every insect lives in the entire planet? Do they know, like the shape of every cloud in the sky and every planet in the universe or something? I don't know. I mean, no, that's not the point. It's like, science tells us, well, if we catalog everything and we define everything, then we know everything, right? And that's kind of the scientific approach. But that's really not the point of omniscience. The point of omniscience is that you know perfectly what to take up for your happiness, and you know perfectly what to give up to avoid suffering. That's the point of omniscience. That's the guts of the point of omniscience is to know perfectly the causes of happiness and to know perfectly the causes of suffering that must be avoided. Now, does an omniscient being know the shape of every cloud and every planet in the universe? Yeah, but it's not really the point. Do they know where every insect lives? Yeah, but it's not really the point. The point of being omniscient is not to have the full catalog of every plant in the cosmos or whatever it is, right? So omnipotent, this is obviously what we grew up with in a Christian sense, where you can do anything, you know everything, and you can do anything. You can cause cancer, you can stop cancer. You can make a lady out of a guy's rib. You can whatever, right? A sparrow falls and you know about it, and you caused it or stopped it or whatever the case might be. So, from a Buddhist perspective, it's a very simple proof that omnipotence doesn't exist. Why? Because cancer does exist. Babies are born which then suffer and die before they have time to offend, a God in the sky. Why would a God in the sky, a remotely compassionate God in the sky, punish a newborn baby, who's never even had the chance to offend it? So it's the point is to say that a divine being who is omnipotent would have to be a not very nice divine being to be doing those things. So the notion of a compassionate divine being is kind of an oxymoron,
Well, that doesn't really work, because you could say that the baby went to heaven and they're blissed out.
And why, if the baby's going to go to heaven, why have it be born to go to heaven? Why not just go straight to heaven?
And that doesn't mean wrong because of past life, because you could see different.
Well, no, if you, I mean.
Then
if
you're
you-
mixing metaphors. You have past lives and omniscience mixed together.
But I mean that's the model in Judaism, for example, mystical Judaism. That's exactly the model. They have past life incarnation, and they have this omniscient thing.
So some things are caused and some things are from omniscience.
Do not say that something are caused on. Actually, this is a good. There's a big debate on it in Jewish tradition. We can talk about it.
Well, we only have 2 minutes, so.
Generally, they have that model basically.
Okay.
But couldn't you have an omnipotent being that's doing something for you? Like you might think of it as like killing a baby is a bad thing, but if it's out of compassion that you don't know about, like it's the same thing as going into judging.
Yeah, so is it possible that an omnipotent being would say there's a reason to cause a baby to be born so that it could die for a reason? Sure, but if they are an omnipotent, compassionate being, why wouldn't they just have the baby go straight to heaven? You know?
And give everybody the realization without having to torture
It's hard
each
to
other.
let go of the idea of God.
Yeah,
you
but
know?
listen, you could say, yeah, there could be all kinds of reasons that God does things which don't appear compassionate that I don't understand. Sure, you could say
So if
that.
you read the Proverbs or some of the things in Job, he's like, and you people shall burn, and I don't want your offerings, and I don't want your psalms and songs, and he's angry. You know, he's angry at people, you
Yeah.
know? So I don't know if, because they're not doing things out of the bottom of their heart, I guess, you know?
So it's it's this thing of are there infinite possible scenarios? Yeah, I mean what would the horns of a rabbit look like if a rabbit had horns? I mean, so you could talk about a lot of theoretical possibilities, but we're dealing in logic, right? So if we're strictly using logic, we would say what would be the logical reason that something would exist this way, and what would be the logical basis for this? And there are lots of possible unknown things that we could say may or may not exist, but logically does it hold water? And then you got to do all of course 4 to go into all that, which course 4 does go into all those different debates about the reasons that things exist and where things come from, and all those sorts of things. Yeah.
So there's this setup that Master Danaga said that he set out to prove future lives, and now class is almost over. So are you saying that that karma is the proof of future
What
lives?
would be the karma of you doing bad things, God being angry?
No, what I'm saying is that tonight we went through the setup for proof of future lives, and next week we're going to do proof of future lives. So
I almost feel like for a lot of these things these proofs to be realizations, we need to have debate,
yeah, absolutely,
right?
absolutely. That's why you have all of course 4.
That's what, next week?
Well,
I think he means the course.
Oh, I'm kind of proposing that we have a debate or something.
sure.
We should
Well-
have debates.
Let me finish going over the homework questions, and then we can do a little debate. How about that?
I'm not saying today, but just like a class would be good as just a debate class.
So I'm open for it. All right, so we did that. So there are two other things to talk about. I'm just going to go over the homework questions. What are the 3 main methods for a normal person to determine that the Buddha is totally correct about the very deep teachings he gave? Right. So there are 3 parts. The teaching can't be disproved by any direct valid perception that we have now or have had. The teaching cannot be disproved by airtight reasoning, and the teachings themselves are free of internal inconsistency, meaning that Lord Buddha said something at one time doesn't contradict what he said at another time.
Doesn't he do that all the time though?
So those are the 3 methods that you would use to determine that he is correct about teachings. You would apply those 3 things, and you'd say, and you would give it by teaching, right? So you say, on this teaching, is there anything anywhere in the canon where the Buddha contradicted himself, right?
Yeah.
Is there,
But
does
there is.
this, yeah, so does this teaching make sense logically, just through logical reasoning applied to this point alone? And does this teaching match my life experience and my perception of how things are in the world, right? So in any given teaching, you look at those three criteria to see if they hold. And then if all three of those criteria hold, then you'd be like, oh, okay, well that's sound, that's solid, right? Okay, the next question, right, is describe briefly 3 ground rules for interpreting the Buddha. That is, for deciding that something that the Buddha said was meant figuratively and not literally.
Like one should kill one's mother and father.
Yeah, so there are 3 great turnings of the wheel where the Buddha at different times in his life taught different things for different audiences. So, he was in this part of the world and they can only hear certain information, they couldn't hear other information. Or they can only understand to a certain level and depth, they couldn't understand something more profound. And then he's over here at another time in his life with another audience, and he could teach something which is more profound and more deep, or more elaborate or more sophisticated, right? And then he's over here, and they're like ignorant sheep herders who can't form a complete sentence, and so he taught something else in a simpler way, right? Then how do you reconcile all that? How do you find consistency and congruency among all those different teachings, right? So, 3 ways you do that. 3 ground rules to apply. All right. First, you check the true intent. Did he have something else specific in mind when he said something which was not literal? Did he have some other purpose in mind by giving this teaching which was not literal?
But we got told not to judge at the beginning what someone else's intention was.
You judge the motivation.
Sorry, Anna, I was kidding. I was
Being
being
a
very
smarty, you're being a smarty pants after class.
I was being
You're going to be
Bruce.
beaten up by your classmates, okay?
I don't know which one of us is more insulted by that.
I was judging Bruce.
Second.
Which everyone does.
Second, is there any contradiction between the statement that Lord Buddha made and our own experience or our own knowledge and what we know to be true? Like, I know that the sky is blue. Did Lord Buddha say the sky is pink? Does it contradict what I know to be true, right? And then third, was there some compelling need? Did the Buddha have some compelling purpose that was served by saying something which is not literally or technically true? Okay? So, there you have it. Any questions or debate? Yes, please.
Well, if there's no such thing as an omnipotent actor in a Buddhist perspective, then who or what sent the slanderous monk to 500 lives at hard labor? And not 501, not 499.
You're hung up on that 500 thing.
Just 500.
And 500 of each thing, right?
And then on that last day of that year, the cell door cracked open and he was delivered to another faith. So if that's not effective omnipotence, it's a pretty good imitation.
It's just karma.
It could just be this.
Just karma is just the way to equivocate the issue by putting another label on it. Just karma is, so omnipotence is a kind of
But
karma.
omnipotence presupposes a being that's making the decisions.
Well, 500 lives is not 499, neither is it 501. Somebody seems to have decided
If you
something.
drop a ball from
Yeah,
the roof,
yeah.
that it's a certain weight, it's gonna hit the ground at a certain time.
You-
That's how I see it.
But you know what, Bruce? Sometimes it's just the editor trying to make the text nice and simple.
Yeah, Bruce.
Like it has to play like Hollywood.
Bruce
You know, we have
Almighty.
Is that, well, I find that idea appealing, but I wouldn't have actually suggested it
I'm
was
just
true.
joking.
So, but isn't this rather specific for the blind hand of gravity or the inverse square law? And how it relates to a particular slander that doesn't get 482 lives instead is, a little bit too tongue-in-cheek. So there's a very specific agency, and if you don't want to call it omnipotence, then it's omnipotence's third cousin on its mother's side, and it acts exactly as if it were an omnipotent actor.
So you're saying like Mr. Karma seems to like the nice round number of 500.
That's right.
Both in Judaism, Christianity, and Buddhism, they teach you, don't hurt your parents, be nice to people, don't lie, don't steal, don't kill. There's angels that watch over you, There's what, and all the angels. It comes from light. I mean, God originally was the sound. You know what I mean? So if you hear emptiness directly, I'm sure that you would hear some sort of sound or light. So there's ways to correlate between religions. You know what I mean?
Should be interesting next week when we actually talk about proof of future lives.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Saji Pugir Jishin Metotram Rira Blingshin Yinde Yampadi Sange Shindu Mite Vivargi Dropu Namda Shinla Juparsho Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamniyatayami Gawadi Gyokum Sunam Yashe Soksokshini Sunam Yashe Legendway Dampa Puni Udoparsho.
By the power of our practice and study and debate this evening, may we quickly come to perceive ultimate reality and attain stainless future rebirths for all time.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Really a lovely treat to have Geshe